The train stopped somewhere under Ohio and took all the light with it. Not dim, not flickering. Gone. The specific kind of dark that makes you suddenly aware of your own breathing. For 3 full seconds, nobody in car 14 said a word. Then, a woman near the cafe end of the aisle stated very calmly, "Oh, that's not good." Which was the most restrained response I could imagine because we were inside a tunnel and outside the windows was the kind of nothing that makes your brain start calculating things it has no business calculating. Then Darby grabbed my hand. Not my sleeve, not the armrest. My hand, fingers sliding between mine with the kind of precision that suggested some part of her had known exactly where they fit, but had been waiting for the dark to grant permission. "Emmett," she said, just my name in a voice I had not heard from her before. All the usual layers, the dry humor, the deflection, the grin she used like a hand wave, were gone. What was left was just Darby, scared and real and right there. "I know," I said, though I didn't exactly. I just wanted to make the tunnel smaller for her. Her grip tightened. Somewhere toward the back of the car, a man was on his phone, using the voice people adopt when they're frightened and trying not to be obvious about it. A baby had started fussing 3 rows back. The emergency floor lighting blinked on, just enough to see shapes, seat outlines, the pale geometry of hands, but not enough to see her face. I could feel her, though. She'd had her elbow against mine for the last 2 hours because she always took the window, and I always ended up beside her by default, the way all our arrangements seemed to default, back to side by side. "What if something's wrong?" she said. Not a question. "It's an Amtrak power outage," I said. "It's probably squirrels." "It's a tunnel, Emmett. Squirrels respect no boundary." She exhaled, not quite a laugh, but in the general direction of one. Then the tunnel held its dark for another 30 seconds, and she said, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't catch it, "If something actually happens, I need you to know something. Nothing is going to happen. You can't promise that. Darby, I'm in love with you." She said it without her voice shaking, which surprised me later when I thought about it. Fear does that sometimes. Strips everything back to what's most true. And apparently what was most true for Darby Pembroke in a stopped train under Ohio with 30-some strangers and a fussing baby was that. I have been for a while. I didn't plan to say it this way. I didn't plan to say it at all. But we're stuck in a tunnel and I needed you to know. The emergency lights pulsed once. Her face appeared for half a second, eyes wide, caught off guard by her own courage, and then the dark again. I had been carrying that sentence for 2 years. Not expecting it, but somewhere in the weight of 4 years of friendship and 2 years of knowing I was in too deep to pretend otherwise, some quiet part of me had apparently been waiting for exactly this. The stripped-down version. No performance in it. "You don't have to say anything," she went on. "I know it's a lot. I know I just got out of something awful. I know you probably don't. Darby. See me that way. And that's fine, I just needed you to. Darby." She stopped. "I see you every way there is," I said. Silence, different from the first kind. "How long?" she asked. "Do you want honest or comforting?" A pause, honest. "Since the time you drove 45 minutes in a February snowstorm to help me move a couch, because I texted that I could handle it myself and it turned out I could not." She made a sound, somewhere between a short laugh and a noise of genuine dismay. "That was almost 2 years ago." "Yeah, Emmett. I know. Why didn't you ever?" "Because you were with someone, and then you weren't, but you were also going through it, and I wasn't going to be the thing that added to your list." The dark just kept sitting there, patient, holding all of it. "I'm not a list," she said, quieter than I expected. "No," I said, "you're the person I couldn't afford to lose." She didn't answer that, but she didn't let go of my hand either. 4 minutes later, the power came back in a surge of overhead fluorescence that made everyone in car 14 blink, like they'd been somewhere else entirely. The woman near the cafe car started clapping. A conductor's voice came over the intercom, explaining down power lines near Cleveland and thanking us for our patience, which felt like the wrong word for what the last 9 minutes had been. Darby was looking at the seat back in front of her. Her hand was still in mine. The side of her face had gone pink in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature outside. So, she said. So, I said. She pulled her hand back, not abruptly, more like she needed it free to think properly. She tucked it into her lap and looked at the Ohio countryside reappearing outside the glass. The dark talked for me, she said. The what? People say things in tunnels they wouldn't say otherwise. It doesn't count the same way. I looked at her. You just told me you're in love with me, and you're attributing it to infrastructure failure. I was scared. You've been scared before. You've never told me I have reliable eyes. She shot me a sideways look. That's extremely specific. I've been sitting on feelings for 2 years. I have specific counters. She covered her face with one hand and said something into her palm that I chose to interpret as my name. Then, we have a whole wedding weekend ahead of us. Opal will survive. Opal will absolutely not survive. She has been planning this wedding since she was in middle school, and if I show up with, she gestured vaguely between us, this unresolved situation, she will redirect the entire weekend toward us. Opal loves me. Opal thinks you are the funniest person alive, which is its own crisis. She stared at the window. I need to think. Okay. Without you looking at me like that. I'm not looking at you like anything. You are looking at me like I just handed you something you've been searching for. That's because you did, I said. She made a sound, exasperation shading into something softer that she swallowed before I could name it. Then she put her earbuds in. I turned toward the window and tried, with moderate success, not to smile too visibly. We rolled into Albany just before 10. Darby's older sister Opal was waiting at the curb outside the station in a white puffy coat and the specific energy of a woman who had 6 months of wedding planning riding on this weekend and needed all participants present and operational. She spotted us the moment we came through the doors. She looked at Darby's face, then at mine, then back at Darby. Oh, she said. Darby stopped walking. Don't. Opal's eyebrows climbed. She was 25 and had the same cheekbones as Darby and the same reflex for noticing things before people were ready to be noticed. I didn't say anything. Your face said a full paragraph. My face is very neutral. Opal turned to me and mouthed, "What happened?" I mouthed back, "Tunnel." Her eyes went wide. Then she turned to Darby with a seamless pivot. "I'm so glad you're here. You look beautiful. Let's get in the car." She steered Darby away by the elbow, glancing back at me once over her shoulder with an expression that said, "Later." I picked up my bag and followed them. It was going to be a long weekend. The Pembroke family had booked a hotel 2 blocks from the venue. Darby and I ended up across the hall from each other. Opal's doing, described as just how the rooms worked out. Neither of us challenged this. In my room, I changed out of my travel clothes and tried to think about the train ride like a calm, rational person. I had been attempting calm rationality about Darby for 2 years. It had not worked yet. 4 years earlier, a mutual colleague had brought us both to the same rooftop party in Logan Square on a Thursday night in September. Darby had looked at the cocktail menu and said, without breaking her expression, $14 for something called a harvest reverie. I'd rather overpay my student loans. I had laughed too loud. She had turned to look at me. That had been that. 4 years of that. 4 years of her bringing soup to my apartment when I got sick, of me talking her through the worst of a relationship that had spent 8 months quietly making her smaller, of shared parking lot conversations, after her family dinners and phone calls that started at 11 and ended somewhere near 2 in the morning, and neither of us ever acknowledged how often. I had noticed, sometime around year 2, that I had stopped being able to picture my life making sense without her in it. I had also noticed that she looked at me differently than she looked at other people. Steadier, more direct, like she had made up her mind about me a long time ago and was keeping it to herself for reasons I didn't fully understand. I had decided I was probably imagining it, because the alternative, being right, meant risking the thing I least wanted to lose. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Darby, Opal is sitting against the wall between our rooms. I can hear her breathing. Me, she's committed to the craft. Darby, She's going to make this her thing this weekend. I can feel it. Me, she already knows something happened. You might as well let her be useful. A pause. Then, Darby, did you mean it? What you said on the train? I looked at that message for a long moment. Me, every word. 3 minutes of nothing, then. Darby, I need to get through this weekend. Me, I know. Darby, that's not a no. It's a I need to get through Saturday first. Me, okay. Darby, okay, that's it? Me, Darby, I've been patient for 2 years. I can manage a weekend. Another pause. Then a single small emoji, a yellow sun, the one she only sent when something had arrived exactly right. I put the phone down and looked at the ceiling for a while, feeling something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. The specific lightness of not having to pretend anymore. The rehearsal dinner was at a steakhouse downtown, 30-plus people around 4 long tables, and somehow Darby and I ended up at opposite ends of the room. She had changed into a dark green wrap top and done something with her hair, and every time she laughed across the table at someone's story, my focus left whatever conversation I was nominally having. Her Aunt Phyllis, who had the energy of someone who had been collecting information at family gatherings since the 90s, materialized at Darby's elbow somewhere around the second course. I watched from across the room. Phyllis's warm, expectant expression. Darby's polite one. Phyllis glancing in my direction. Then Phyllis said something I couldn't hear, and Darby looked down at the bread plate in front of her and said something back. Opal, seated 3 spots away, went very still. I found something interesting to look at in my water glass. Later, at the bar, Darby appeared beside me while I was waiting for a soda I didn't particularly want. She looked straight at the bottles on the back wall. I handled Aunt Phyllis badly, she said. What did she ask? Whether you and I were finally going to stop doing whatever we've been doing. She said it like it belonged to someone else's story. I said there was nothing to do. I nodded slowly. That was wrong, she said. I panicked. She caught me mid-bite and I said the first thing that came out and the first thing was wrong. She finally looked at me. I'm not embarrassed of you. I want to be clear about that. I'm embarrassed of me, of how long I waited, of how bad I am at letting people see the things that actually matter to me. She exhaled. I'm sorry. I turned toward her. The bar was loud around us in the particular way of family events. Laughter too big for the space. 3 separate conversations running together. You don't owe me an apology, I said, but I need you to hear this. I can't be nothing, not after the train, not after what you said. She nodded. Quick, certain. You're not nothing, she said. You are the least nothing person in my life. A pause. I just don't know how to let people watch me try. I looked at her for a moment. Then we don't let them. We figure it out first, just us, and then we decide what to share. But Darby, we figure it out. That's not optional for me. The corner of her mouth moved. That's nearly an ultimatum. It's a position statement. Very professional of you. I've been in marketing for 6 years. I know how to present a case. She almost smiled, then quietly. We figure it out. Yeah? Yeah. She bumped my shoulder with hers, a gesture I had a comprehensive catalog of meanings for, built up over 4 years. And then she walked back to her table, and I stood at the bar, feeling something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time, that this was actually going to happen. The wedding was at a restored textile mill outside the city, December light coming through tall industrial windows and making the whole place look warm and slightly unreal. Opal cried before she even reached the end of the aisle. Her husband-to-be, a quiet, steady man named Gus, who had the particular look of someone who had been waiting his whole life for Opal Pembroke to walk into a room, started crying when he saw Opal crying, which cascaded through most of the front row. Darby stood up at the front, in a dress the color of deep water, holding her bouquet with both hands. She smiled at her sister the whole way down the aisle, not a bridesmaid smile, a real one, the kind that has no performance in it, just pure gladness. She looked for me twice during the ceremony. I was in the 5th row on the left side. Both times, she held the eye contact longer than she needed to. I stopped pretending to look anywhere else. At the cocktail hour, I kept a careful distance, as agreed. She had asked for space to get through the day. and I intended to honor that, even if honoring it meant standing across a room that was only so large. I talked to Gus's brother about college basketball, a topic on which I held exactly one real opinion, and ate several small toasts with brie and cranberry from a passing tray, and periodically felt Darby enter my line of sight the way you feel a door open in a room you're already in. Then the band in the reception hall began a slow song. I was at the edge of the dance floor when she walked up. Shoes already swapped for flats, bouquet gone, no preamble. She held out her hand. "Dance with me," she said. Statement, not question. I thought we were getting through the weekend. I revised the schedule. I took her hand. She led us onto the floor. When my arm settled at her waist and her hand went to my shoulder, she let out a breath, small, contained, like she'd been holding it since Ohio. Around us, couples swayed under the industrial lights. Opal and Gus, her parents, cousins, college friends. Aunt Phyllis was definitely watching. A woman I thought might be Gus's grandmother was smiling at us with the expression of someone watching a long-delayed thing finally happen. "Opal's going to have thoughts," I said. "Opal has been having thoughts since Albany. She didn't look away from me. She can keep having them." We moved through the song, and I thought about the train, the dark, the stopped engine, the 8 minutes where the world had shrunk down to her hand in mine, and something true being said for the first time. "I have to tell you something," Darby said. Her voice was careful. "Okay. 14 months ago, our friend Candace told me something by accident. She looked at my shoulder, not my face. She said you'd mentioned to her that you thought you might be in love with your best friend, and then she panicked and said she'd said too much, and I told her I didn't know who she meant." A pause. "But I knew." I went still. "I knew she meant me," Darby said, "and I spent 3 weeks constructing an argument for why she might have meant someone else. And then I stopped constructing it and just sat with it for over a year, waiting for a moment that felt safe enough. She finally looked at me, and then a tunnel did it for me. Darby, I wasted a year," she said. "I want you to know I'm aware of that, and I'm not going to waste more of it standing across rooms from you pretending." She straightened slightly, like she'd made a decision before she walked out here and was just now arriving at the part where she said it out loud. "I love you, not because a tunnel gave me permission. I love you right now, in this room, with the lights on, where Aunt Phyllis can see." I slowed us to almost nothing. "I love you too," I said. "I have been in love with you since February of 2 years ago, when you drove across town in a snowstorm to help me with a couch I absolutely could have managed." "You could not have managed. It was an 8-foot couch. It was an 8-foot couch in a third-floor walk-up," she said. "You would have dropped it on the stairs and blamed the couch." I would have adapted. She laughed, the real one, the unguarded version, and I kissed her once, there on the dance floor in front of everyone, and when I pulled back her expression was the exact mix of startled and pleased that I intended to spend considerable time creating going forward. Opal started clapping. A few others joined in. Aunt Phyllis looked profoundly vindicated. Darby pressed her face against my shoulder and said she was listing the entire family on Facebook Marketplace at a very low price, and I held her closer and said the market was probably slow in December. We danced until they cut the cake. Gus found a moment to shake my hand and say, simply, "She talks about you differently than she talks about anyone else. Figured you should know." I didn't have a good response to that, so I just nodded, and he nodded, and we went back to our respective people. Near the end of the night, I found a moment on the patio outside where the cold had cleared the air to something sharp and clean. Darby appeared beside me a few minutes later, holding her heels instead of wearing them, coat over arm instead of on, which was her seasonal version of a principled stand. She looked at the city in front of us. Albany in December, modest and lit. A stretch of the Hudson visible past the bridge. Everything else just shapes in the dark. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "You, mostly. That's been the default for a while." She leaned her shoulder against mine. "We lost a lot of time." "Some," I said. "A lot," she corrected. "I kept waiting for the right moment. Some specific, well-lit circumstance where it would be acceptable to say what I was thinking. And instead, you got a power outage under Cleveland." And instead I got a power outage under Cleveland. She tipped her head back. Maybe that's what power outages are for. I turned toward her. She was already looking at me. December in her cheeks, the muffled music behind us through the glass, her hair doing what it always eventually did, escaping whatever she'd done to it hours earlier. I thought about the couch in February and the late phone calls and every moment I had chosen safe. I thought about how the tunnel had not created anything. It had just removed everything I'd built to keep the truth from getting out. Thank you for saying it first, I said. She looked at me steadily. Thank you for not making me regret it. Darby, where would I go? My whole life is arranged around your vicinity. She laughed, real and sudden, and I kissed her forehead, and she tucked herself into my side, and we stood there until the cold finally made a compelling argument for going back inside. 8 months later, we took a train again. Shorter run this time, Chicago to Milwaukee and back, for a small gallery opening where one of Darby's illustration series had been included in a print retrospective. She had been casually not mentioning how much this meant to her for 2 weeks, which meant it meant a great deal to her. She'd reorganized her portfolio folder on her laptop 3 times. She'd looked up the gallery's other featured artists and then closed the tab like I hadn't seen her do it. I brought coffee from the place on Clark Street she liked, with oat milk and no sugar, because I'd known her order for years, and I was done pretending I hadn't. She looked at the cup, then at me. You remembered the oat milk. I've known your coffee order for 3 years. You never got it from me before. I was being considerate of your independence. You were being exasperating, she said, but she took it and held it in both hands like something to keep. We boarded and she took the window seat. I sat next to her because that was where I sat. The Lake Michigan shoreline unfolded on her side, gray and flat and large in the specific November way, and she leaned slightly into me and watched it go by. Somewhere between the city and the suburbs, the train passed through a short tunnel. 30 seconds, maybe less. The lights dimmed, came back up, and between those 2 moments, Darby's hand found mine. When we came back out into the gray afternoon light, she was still holding on. You okay? I asked. Yes, she said. She didn't let go, just a reflex. I looked at her sideways. She was watching the shoreline, but the corners of her mouth were doing something she was trying not to let happen. I waited. She had earned the right to say things when she was ready. I wasn't going anywhere. Emmett, she said. Yeah. I love you. Same words as Ohio. Same voice, stripped back and direct. But this time there was daylight everywhere, and no broken train, and no reason except that she wanted to say it. Just because. Not because I'm scared. Because it's true, and I feel like saying it. I brought her hand up and kissed her knuckles once. I love you too, I said, and I'm taking you to dinner after the opening. That sounds like a bribe. It's called a date. It's called you wearing the good jacket, and hoping I don't notice you're nervous. I notice everything about you, I said. It's only fair you notice some things back. She finally let the smile happen. The unguarded version. The one I'd been keeping track of since a Thursday night in September on a rooftop in Logan Square. The one I intended to keep noticing for every year I was lucky enough to be nearby. Outside, Lake Michigan reappeared, wide and indifferent and endless, and we sat in car 6 with our hands laced together. No tunnel required, no disaster needed, just 2 people who had finally decided that honesty didn't need a reason and love didn't need permission. What would you do if your best friend grabbed your hand in the dark and told you the thing you'd both been keeping quiet for years? Have you ever been the one who finally said it, or the one who was waiting for someone else to go first? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, a little quiet, a little late, and true, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.